Attraction doesn't deepen in the moment. It deepens afterward. The drive home, the quiet room, the stillness that settles in once you've left. That's when the real work happens. Not in what you said, or how you looked, or whether the conversation went smoothly, but in what your presence left behind. Women don't fall for what happens while you're together. They fall for what lingers when you're not. They replay the pauses. They remember the tone. They hold on to the subtle tension that didn't fully resolve, because the human mind is wired to return to what feels unresolved, what feels meaningful, what feels like it's still reaching toward them. Most men focus entirely on the interaction itself. They plan the next date. They track whether the jokes landed. They worry about whether they came across as interesting enough. But the most powerful part of attraction isn't what happens while you're in the same room. It's what happens in your absence. When you leave, you don't just leave your physical presence. You leave an emotional imprint. And if that imprint is clear, grounded, and slightly open-ended, it becomes something she returns to. She doesn't just remember you, she rehearses you. She wonders what you're doing. She imagines how the next conversation might unfold. That internal replay is where attachment forms. It's not driven by grand gestures. It's not built through constant texting or perfect timing. It's built through emotional echo, through phrases that don't close the loop completely, through words that create a quiet pull rather than a loud demand. When you understand this, you stop trying to impress her in the moment and start thinking about what you're planting for later, because attraction isn't a switch you flip. It's a current you build, and the strongest currents are felt in the quiet spaces between. Today, I'm going to show you 3 simple phrases that create exactly that kind of lingering effect. Not because they're magic words, but because they tap into the way emotional memory actually works. Let's begin. Words don't just convey information. They trigger imagination, and imagination is the engine of emotional attachment. When you speak to someone with clarity and quiet intention, you're not just giving them sentences. You're giving them a mental space to inhabit. The brain naturally seeks closure, but it clings far more tightly to what's left gently open. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency to remember unfinished moments long after completed ones have faded. In attraction, this works the same way. When a conversation ends neatly, with all questions answered and all tension resolved, the mind moves on. But when a phrase leaves a soft thread unspooled, the imagination takes over. She begins to fill in the blanks. She anticipates the next interaction. And anticipation, when handled with emotional maturity, intensifies desire far more effectively than constant contact ever could. This isn't about games or calculated distance. It's about understanding that emotional memory operates on resonance, not repetition. A single sentence, delivered with grounded presence, can create a lingering frequency that outlasts hours of small talk. The phrases we're about to explore work precisely because they tap into this architecture of emotional memory. They don't demand attention. They invite it. They don't close the door. They leave it slightly ajar. And in that space where curiosity meets certainty, attachment begins to take root. If this kind of psychological insight resonates with you, subscribe to Femme Psychology with Emma. We explore attraction without gimmicks. Phrase 1. I want you. The first phrase is simple, direct, and rarely used with the quiet confidence it requires. Most men avoid these words because they fear coming across as demanding or overly intense. So they soften the edges. They say things like, I'd love to see you again, or maybe we should hang out sometime, or if you're free, I'd enjoy grabbing dinner. These alternatives are polite, but they're also diluted. They hand the emotional weight back to her. They ask for permission rather than expressing certainty. And in doing so, they remove the very tension that makes attraction deepen. When you say, I want you, you're not issuing a demand. You're stating a truth. You're removing the ambiguity that so many men mistakenly believe makes them appear respectful. But ambiguity doesn't create respect. It creates hesitation. And hesitation is the quiet killer of chemistry. Imagine a quiet moment after dinner. The noise of the restaurant has faded. You're both standing near the door. The conversation has naturally slowed. You look at her, meet her eyes, and say it calmly. I want you. Not rushed, not performative, just clear. The psychological shift is immediate. Your certainty creates a safe container for her own desires to surface. Women don't need to be pursued relentlessly. They need to feel that a man is clear about his intentions. When you express desire without apology, you signal emotional maturity. You show that you can hold space for your own feelings without needing her to manage them. That steadiness is what leaves the imprint. But the impact depends entirely on delivery. If you say it while checking your phone, or if your voice cracks with nervousness, the words collapse into neediness. The phrase only works when your body language is relaxed, your pacing is unhurried, and your tone carries the quiet weight of a man who is comfortable with his own desire. Say it, then let it breathe. Don't follow it with a question. Don't rush to fill the silence. The power lies in the stillness that follows. Here's what most men do wrong. They dilute the statement immediately. They say, "I want you. I'd like to see you again if you're interested." That backtracking kills the effect. It tells her that you weren't actually certain, you were testing the water. But when you say it and hold the space afterward, when you let the phrase stand on its own without needing her immediate validation, you communicate something far more powerful than desire. You communicate self-possession, and self-possession is magnetic. She'll replay that moment later, not because the words were clever, but because the certainty behind them was real. And that certainty, grounded, unapologetic, unhurried, is what stays with her long after you've left. Phrase 2. I notice you. The second phrase shifts the focus from desire to depth. In a world where attention is constantly fragmented, being truly seen is one of the most intimate experiences a person can have. Most men compliment appearance or offer generic praise. You look great. You're really funny. These are fine, but they skim the surface. They don't create emotional resonance because they don't require real observation. I notice you is different. It's not about what she looks like. It's about how she moves through the world. It's about the quiet details that reveal her character. When you say it, you're signaling that you've been paying attention, not just to her words, but to her patterns, her energy, the way she handles moments of stress or joy. Picture a conversation that has turned personal. She's sharing something about how she approaches challenges or how she prioritizes peace over chaos. Instead of offering advice or shifting to your own story, you pause. You look at her and you say, I notice you. The psychological effect is profound. Recognition triggers oxytocin, the bonding hormone. But more importantly, it creates emotional expansion. When someone acknowledges your inner world without trying to change it, you feel safe. You feel valued. And safety is the fertile ground where attraction takes root. What most men do instead is over-explain. They turn it into a performance. I notice how smart you are, and how driven, and how thoughtful. It becomes a list, not an observation. And lists don't linger. A single grounded statement does. The key is specificity without excess. You're not trying to flatter her. You're acknowledging something real that you've genuinely observed. Maybe it's the way she listens without interrupting. Maybe it's how she doesn't need to fill every silence with words. Maybe it's the calm way she handles tension without becoming reactive. When you notice those things and you say so calmly, without agenda, you create a moment of genuine connection. Because most people go through life feeling unseen. They perform, they adapt, they manage how they're perceived. But when someone sees past the performance and acknowledges the substance beneath, it creates an emotional imprint that doesn't fade easily. Delivery is everything here. Your voice should be low and steady. Your eye contact should be warm but unhurried. Say it as a quiet revelation, not a compliment designed to impress. Let the words land without following them up immediately. Don't ask her if she agrees. Don't shift to another topic, just let the recognition sit there. Because the goal isn't to make her feel good in the moment. The goal is to make her feel seen in a way she'll carry with her long after you've left. She'll think about it later, not because you praised her, but because you witnessed her. And being witnessed, truly witnessed, is one of the deepest forms of intimacy. Phrase 3, stay with me. The third phrase is subtle, but it carries immense emotional weight. Stay with me. This isn't about holding someone down. It's about anchoring a moment of connection before it dissolves. Most men either rush through intimate pauses or let them slip away entirely. They change the subject to avoid tension. They check their phones. They fill the quiet with unnecessary chatter. In doing so, they break the magnetic pull that naturally forms when two people are truly aligned. Stay with me is an invitation to linger. It's a quiet request to preserve the space between you. It works best in moments of natural resonance, after a shared laugh, during a pause in conversation, or when the energy between you has shifted into something softer, more present. Imagine you're sitting together. The conversation has slowed. There's a comfortable silence. Instead of stepping out of it, you meet her gaze and say, "Stay with me." Psychologically, this creates micro-intimacy. It signals that you're not afraid of closeness. You're not trying to control the interaction or steer it toward a specific outcome. You're simply asking to remain in the moment together. That emotional containment is deeply attractive because it shows you can tolerate intensity without needing to manage it. You're offering presence, not pressure. What most men do instead is either overcompensate with urgency, "Don't leave yet," or "We should keep talking," which feels clingy, or they let the moment fade passively. Both approaches break the tension. Stay with me preserves it. It's calm, it's grounded. It trusts the connection enough to let it breathe. The impact depends on your internal state. If you're anxious about losing her attention, the phrase will sound desperate. But if you're genuinely content in the moment, if you're simply asking to extend what's already happening, it carries a quiet gravity. Say it slowly. Keep your posture relaxed. Don't follow it with a question or a plan. Just let the invitation hang in the air. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer isn't a destination, it's a pause. A moment where she doesn't have to perform or explain or think 3 steps ahead. She can just be. And when a woman feels that kind of emotional safety with you, when she realizes you're not rushing her, not angling for something, not trying to fill the space, she relaxes in a way that creates lasting attachment. She'll remember that feeling. Not the words themselves necessarily, but the sense that you created a moment worth staying in. And that memory of being invited to simply exist without pressure is what she'll return to later when she's alone. The power of these phrases doesn't live in the words themselves. It lives in the space behind them. You can say them perfectly, but if your internal state is fractured, if you're seeking validation, rushing to fill silence, or subtly managing her reaction, they will fall flat. Congruence is what makes the difference. Your voice, your posture, your eye contact, and your pacing must all align with the message you're sending. When your delivery matches your words, you create emotional certainty. And certainty is what leaves the imprint. A steady tone communicates grounding. Relaxed shoulders signal that you're not dependent on her response. Unhurried pacing shows that you're comfortable in your own presence. These nonverbal cues do far more work than the phrasing ever could. Words are just the surface. The depth comes from who you are in the moment you speak them. If you're internally regulated, if you're secure in your own worth, if you can sit with silence without reaching for control, the phrases become natural extensions of your presence rather than tactics you're trying. That's what creates the lingering effect. Not cleverness, not strategy, but quiet, unshakable alignment between what you say and who you are. So before you use any of these phrases, check in with yourself. Are you saying it because you genuinely mean it, or because you're hoping it will produce a result? The difference will be felt, and it will determine whether the words create connection or collapse into performance. Attraction doesn't live in the noise of the interaction. It lives in the quiet that follows. What she thinks about later is what deepens the connection. Not how many plans you made, not how many compliments you offered, but the emotional residue you left behind. The moment that felt different. The phrase that didn't need to be repeated. The sense that you were fully present, and that presence now echoes in her mind. Emotional memory is far more powerful than clever language. The human brain is wired to return to what feels meaningful, not what feels impressive. And meaning is built through clarity, recognition, and the courage to hold space without rushing to fill it. When you speak from a place of internal steadiness, you give her something she can't easily replace. Not a perfect conversation, but a quiet frequency she'll find herself returning to. It's not about saying the right words. It's about meaning them. And when you do, you don't need to chase her attention. You simply leave something worth remembering. Which of these phrases feels hardest for you to say naturally? Comment below. I'd genuinely like to know. And if you value psychological depth over quick fixes, subscribe to Femme Psychology with Emma. I'll see you in the next one.